So at this point, um, what I want to do is we're going to capture joystick input. And if we go into our project settings here, there's a tab called input. And input is broken down into axes. So there's a horizontal axis, there's a vertical axis, and these, right now, these ones are mapped to the right and left buttons. If I look at the secondary horizontal, these are mapped to the joystick. And this is the actual, this is the axis that is used on the left analog stick. So the Fire TV controller has two analog sticks. It has 4 face buttons, a D-pad, and then 4 shoulder buttons, 2 top ones and 2 triggers, just like a console controller. And we can leverage its analog stick by simply looking at the horizontal input. So how do we access this? So you'll see up here we have get right key and get left key. Well, instead of actually looking for a specific key, what we can do is look for an axis. And the other thing that we can do is we can capture that axis here. So var, let's do horizontal axis. How about this? Yeah, horizontal axis equals input dot get axis. And then from here, what we'll do is we'll do horizontal. So there's a whole bunch of other inputs. There was inputs that you basically pull them up by name. And the way that an axis works is that when the axis is in rest, the value is 0. When there's movement, it either becomes +1 or -1. And then there's a range in between. So if I move the analog stick to the right, it could be anywhere from 0.1 all the way up to 1. And it's a percentage of that range. And in games where we have, if we have some specific stuff, like let's say we have like a very specialized controls, like our player, we want him to move really slow if they're not moving the analog stick all the way to the edge, we can multiply that percentage that we get back by the speed before we multiply it and apply it to the force or the velocity. We're not going to do that. All we're going to do is we're going to detect whether the horizontal axis is positive or negative. So in this case, we can look at horizontal axis, and we can see if horizontal axis is greater than 0, it's going to the right, and if horizontal axis is less than 0, it's going to the left. Now, if I run the game, okay, try that again. If I run the game and I move to the right and I move to the left, you'll see that it still works just like it worked before. I don't have my controller plugged into my computer right now, but if I was to plug in the controller, it would also work. And that's because the horizontal axis is mapped to the keyboard and to the game controller. And by basically just abstracting this out and just looking at the axis, we now have everything we need to know to support a Fire TV controller. We can also support Fire tablets and Fire phone just by the touch with the mouse input. And if we wanted to run this on the desktop, we could use the mouse and keyboard as well, which is always good for testing.